Coming up on this Friday edition of Daybreak, North Korea reverses an earlier decision and says it will not send any cheerleaders to the upcoming Asian Games in South Korea. President Park Geun-hye will consider designating southern areas hit by torrential rains and flash flooding, including the city of Busan, as special disaster zones. Plus, the UN Security Council convenes an emergency meeting after images allegedly show Russian forces inside Ukraine helping pro-Moscow rebels fight government troops. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Friday, August 29th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, in an about turn on its earlier decision, North Korea says it will not send a cheerleading squad to the upcoming Asian Games in the South Korean city of Incheon. So it looks as though North Korean athletes will have to make do with the support of their coaches and staff. Appearing on state-run Korean Central TV on Thursday, the vice chairman of North Korea's National Olympic Committee blamed Seoul's concerns over the cheering team when the two sides met last month. He added that the decision was relayed to South Korea last week. Accommodation expenses for the cheering team were a very thorny issue because the host nation can only provide partial financial support for the athletes. This according to international preset rules. Despite the move, the North has already said it will send a 273-member delegation made up of athletes and sports officials to the Asian Games, which kick off on September 19th in Incheon. South Korea and the United States have wrapped up their annual joint training drills 1 day ahead of schedule. The Combined Forces Command says the computer-simulated Ulchi Freedom Guardian exercises successfully met all training goals. It added the two allies were able to elevate their joint defense capabilities as well as their readiness alongside the UN partner states. This year, analysts anticipate the completion of the exercises, which North Korea considers a war game, could pave the way for rosier inter-Korean ties going forward. Now, President Park Geun-hye has promised residents of Korea's southeast, recently hit very hard by torrential rain and flash flooding, that she will look into declaring the region a special disaster zone. The Korean leader travelled to the southern port city of Busan, one of the hardest hit areas, on Thursday, and ordered officials there to come up with a new system to better respond to such natural disasters, as well as an inspection of aging reservoirs, not just in the south, but nationwide. She also called on the authorities to make sure the affected residents return to their ordinary lives as soon as possible so they can enjoy next month's Chuseok holiday with their families. The father of one of the high school students killed in April's ferry disaster has ended an over 6-week-long hunger strike aimed at forcing lawmakers to set up a full, independent inquiry into the sinking. However, the battle over launching a special probe into the disaster rages on inside and outside Korea's National Assembly. Ulchi reports.
A prominent relative of the victims of the ferry disaster ended his 46-day hunger strike, raising hopes of a breakthrough in a political deadlock that has paralyzed parliamentary proceedings in Korea for months. The fasting by Kim Young-ho, the father of one of 233 students killed in the April ferry sinking, has been the focal points of protests by victims' families demanding an independent investigation into the circumstances behind the disaster.
Although I decided to end the hunger strike, I will continue to protest until the special law is passed at the National Assembly. My goal is to build a country that is safe to live in. When I get better, I will go back to the Gwanghwamun Square.
The families want a committee in charge of the probe to be given investigative powers, but rival parties have been unable to come to terms on an agreement that satisfies all sides. The bereaved families say the end of Kim's hunger strike is not indicative of any progress being made in negotiations, and that their protests will continue. But the end of Kim's fasting is raising hopes that differences will be bridged. The ruling Saenuri Party is most optimistic. Ruling party leaders held a second round of talks with representatives of the victims' families on Wednesday and reported progress. Another meeting is scheduled for next Monday. The talks are taking place with a newfound sense of urgency. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy has boycotted all parliamentary activities in protest at the ruling party's refusal to give bereaved family members a greater say in negotiations over a bill that would probe the causes of the ferry accident. The ruling and opposition parties have reached agreement on the legislation on 2 previous occasions, but both drafts were rejected by the Seoul ferry families. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Staying with the domestic political scene, and Korea's Prime Minister is expected to call on the National Assembly on this Friday to pass bills on stabilizing the livelihoods of the people, emphasizing that Korea needs to grasp this so-called golden time to haul its economy out of a long and protracted slump. Jung Hong-won will especially urge the prompt passage of bills focused on revitalizing the economy. As we just heard in Myung-gil's report, the political deadlock over the contested Seoul-ho ferry bill aimed at uncovering the truth behind the deadly accident has left key economic bills in limbo at the National Assembly.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, in some economic news, and on the back of strong exports, Korea logged a current account surplus for the 29th straight month in July. This came even as imports rose very sharply. Hwang Jae reports.
Korea has posted a current account surplus every month for nearly 2.5 years now. The central bank says the nation logged a surplus of $7.91 billion last month. That's almost identical to the $7.92 billion surplus recorded in June and to the $7.9 billion surplus in the same month last year. Exports of products rose 1% from a year earlier to almost $54 billion on strong shipments of automobiles and steel products, while imports increased 3.5% to $47 billion. The Bank of Korea says, however, that the rise in imports does not necessarily indicate a pickup in domestic demand, as it comes on the back of strong oil prices. Experts also warn on too much optimism.
The import volume still remains sluggish, but the rise in energy prices pulled up the total amount of imports. So the current account surplus is still largely coming from the slumping domestic demand.
The current account surplus during the January to July period now stands at over $47 billion, up 20% from the same period a year ago. The bank expects the Korean economy to easily reach its $84 billion current account surplus projection for all of this year, but adds that this month's surplus is likely to fall short of July's due to fewer working days. Hwang Jae, Arirang News.
Now, the average lending rate at Korea's commercial banks has hit an all-time low, mostly due to the continued fall in the household lending rate and mortgage loans. The Bank of Korea said on Thursday that the average rate for bank deposits came to 2.4% in July, the lowest since related statistics began being compiled in 1996. With the local economy not really showing much of a sign of improvement, the Bank of Korea cut the benchmark interest rate to 2.25% early this month. Experts say it probably won't be long before interest rates actually fall into the 1% range. Korea's state-run anti-corruption agency has started cracking down on the illegal trade of agricultural, livestock and fisheries products ahead of the Chuseok, or Korean Thanksgiving holiday, which comes up in the second week of next month. The Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission says it will be closely looking into irregular cases such as false labelling of origin and even fake expiration dates all the way through until September 12th. Anyone who suspects a business of corrupt practices can inform the Commission through its website, which you can see on the screen there, or by dialing 110 in Korea. Those providing information are eligible for cash rewards, big ones in fact, and their identities will be protected. Now, like a great many countries in the developed world at least, weddings can be a very expensive business here in Korea, but an increasing number of soon-to-be couples are deciding to keep things simple and are going for practicality and uniqueness over glitz and glamour. Our Connie Kim has this report.
Skipping the conventional photo shoot and dropping the bride and groom gift exchange process is what these newlyweds did when preparing for their wedding back in May. They borrowed a small house in the city for their wedding and only invited close friends and family.
We didn't want to spend a lot on a typical wedding ceremony like others, so we decided to skip the expensive gift exchanges between families. Even our wedding rings were only $500.
All the money the couple saved will go to a second honeymoon. More pairs are choosing to cut down the frills, and it's no wonder because saying "yes, I do" in Korea can be an extravagant affair. Check out the statistics for yourself. With an average $24,000 that a couple spends on preparing for marriage, about 1/4 is spent on hunsu, a wedding tradition. Hunsu consists of furniture and other household items a bride buys to fill her new home that has been purchased by the groom, and it's symbolic of old patriarchal traditions. With Korea's long-standing patriarchal society slowly fading and soon-to-be married couples looking for a special experience, one-of-a-kind wedding ceremonies are on the rise. And industry insiders back this up, saying an increasing number of couples these days are going against wedding norms.
In Korea, there's an increasing number of people who have lived abroad, and naturally they have become receptive to the different wedding cultures. I think it has contributed to the recent growing number of couples holding unique weddings.
Kim says requests for chapel weddings and house weddings have become more popular to tie the knot while making ends meet. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's leading orchestra, the Seoul Philharmonic, has wrapped up their grand European tour with a performance at a 120-year-old festival known for its summer concerts, the BBC Proms. Our Park Geun-hye reports from London.
The BBC Proms is one of the world's greatest classical music festivals, founded back in 1895. Since then, the annual event has showcased the most prestigious orchestras and musicians. This is where the Proms concerts are held every evening from the month of July through September, all broadcast live on BBC Radio 3. And the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra makes its debut here at the Proms this summer as the first Korean orchestra to take part in its 120-year history. Maestro Jung Myung-hoon, who's led the orchestra since 2005, nurturing it to become one of Asia's best while at the helm, says he's excited to meet the audience members at the Proms.
It is a great honor to be asked to participate in this festival, and it is a recognition of the quality of the orchestra. But I think as performers, once we start a concert, all those things don't matter. It's just that public.
The Seoul Philharmonic performs 3 repertoires: Debussy's La Mer, Tchaikovsky's Symphony No. 6, and a contemporary piece written by prominent Korean composer Eun Suk-jin titled Su Concerto for Shan and Orchestra.
This piece is very abstract, but they have so amazing, so thousand colors between the chord harmony, between breathing. Each breathing is so organic.
With its London performance, the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra wraps up its 2014 European tour, spanning 4 music festivals including the Grafeneck in Austria and the Merano in Italy. Park Geun-hye, Arirang News, London.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Friday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, who's standing by at the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency meeting in New York as Ukraine said Russian combat troops have crossed its border and launched a full-scale invasion. UNSC members expressed outrage at Moscow. U.S. Ambassador Samantha Power accused Russia of manipulating and outright lying on its plans with Ukraine. Russia's diplomat suggested Washington should stop interfering in the affairs of Ukraine without denying the presence of Russian volunteers in Ukraine. Earlier, Kiev's Defense and Security Council had said a border town on the Azov Sea and other parts of southeast Ukraine had fallen under the control of Russian forces, opening up a new war front. The leader of the separatist group, the Donetsk People's Republic, told Russian TV that as many as 4,000 Russian soldiers were fighting with the rebels. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko canceled the planned trip to Turkey after a top official said Russian tanks and military vehicles rolled into the country after firing missiles. The World Health Organization warns the Ebola outbreak could reach as many as 20,000 cases, a scale never before anticipated. The WHO said it has on record 1,552 Ebola deaths so far in Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Nigeria. But Assistant Director General Bruce Aylward said the actual number of cases could be 2 to 4 times higher than that currently being reported. He underlined the need to establish a system that could deal with such robust numbers. Health workers on the ground have said the resources they have been greatly insufficient. The WHO is calling for some $490 million to be spent over the next 9 months to combat the outbreak, adding that it requires 750 international workers and 12,000 national workers across West Africa. And turning our eyes to politics now, Turkey's former Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan has officially been sworn in as the country's first directly elected head of state. During the ceremony, the former 3-term Prime Minister promised to honor the Constitution and to protect Turkey's independence and integrity. Previously, he had promised to give more clout to the presidency, a previously ceremonial post drawing the ire of his critics. And could a new iPhone or two be on the horizon? Apple announced it will hold a special media event in its hometown of Cupertino on September 9th, with the details of the event captured in the cryptic words, "Wish we could say more." Rumors have been rife, though, that the U.S. tech company would unveil 2 versions of its best-selling smartphones, one with a 4.7-inch screen and the other a 5.5-inch screen. Techies will also be watching for the so-called sapphire display screens, reportedly more scratch-resistant, and also the long-awaited smartwatch.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with not the FIFA World Cup, but the FIBA World Cup, which is set to begin this weekend in Spain. And with 24 nations competing in the basketball tournament, Korea will be grouped into Group D. And while it's the first time in 20 years that Korea has qualified for the event, which was formerly known as the World Basketball Championship, they're not expected to survive the group stage as they're grouped with Angola, Australia, Lithuania, Mexico, and Slovenia. And while it'll be a tough task for the Korean national team, they hope to use the experience as a tune-up before the Incheon Asian Games. And now staying in basketball, NBA fans in Korea got a treat when Washington Wizards point guard John Wall visited Korea on Thursday and held a youth basketball clinic. With the special event taking place at Myeongji High School, several youth basketball players got a chance to learn a thing or two from one of the best point guards in the NBA. And while he was impressed with their skills, fans were impressed with his confidence when he said that he could beat LeBron James in a one-on-one game. And now moving over to football, where Son Heung-min of Bayer Leverkusen has been on a tear lately, scoring his third goal of the season and his second Champions League goal during the second leg of the Champions League playoffs. With Bayer Leverkusen facing off against FC Copenhagen in the second leg of the Champions League playoffs, Son Heung-min scores his second straight Champions League goal, helping his German club win 4-0. With the win, they advance to the Champions League group stages for the second straight year. And speaking of which, the UEFA Champions League group stage drawing took place earlier today, and while Son Heung-min's Bayer Leverkusen was drawn with Benfica, Zenit St. Petersburg, and Monaco, the most interesting group, well, Group E. And in the group are Bayern Munich, who won the 2013 Champions League final, Manchester City, CSKA Moscow, and AS Roma. And while Bayern Munich and Man City are expected to advance to the next round, Moscow and Roma have what it takes to pull an upset in the group as well. And now over to the Nanjing Youth Olympics, which came to an end on Thursday night. Now, Korea finished off with a rather impressive 5 gold, 7 silver, and 7 bronze medal after adding a late silver medal in football. And so with that, we're going to finish things off with some Thursday night KBO action. The Lotte Giants beat the Kia Tigers in a close game 6-5, with the SK Wyverns hanging on to beat the LG Twins 4-2, and the Nexen Heroes crushed the Hanwha Eagles 10-4. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the first place Samsung Lions take on the struggling Tusan Bears. And of course, going into the game, we go over to the bottom of the first inning. A wild pitch scores Min Byung-hun from third, and Tusan takes a 1-0 lead. Next play, Hon Sung-eun with a man on deep to left center. Gone, a 2-run shot, and the Tusan Bears take an early 3-0 lead. Ninth inning, Tusan up 6-3. Choi Tae-in with an RBI double cuts the deficit to 6-4 before Chae Young-woo makes it 6-5 with another RBI double to right center. With the tying run on second, Lee Seung-yup strikes out swinging, and the Tusan Bears hang on to win this one 6-5. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. I'm Lee Ji-yeon here with your weather updates. It's still raining in some of the southern coastal regions near Jeollado provinces and Jeju. About 20 to 60 millimeters of additional rain is in the forecast for those regions, and it could fall heavily along with thunder and lightning at times. But for here up north, we'll get sporadic showers in the afternoon hours, but it should be a very spotty one, and most of the time, skies should stay clear with warm temperatures. So let's take a closer look at today's temperatures. The afternoon high in Seoul will rise to 29, while Daegu and Gwangju will peak at 27 and 28 respectively. Now for other regions, it looks like down on Jeju Island will peak at 24 and Dokdo will rise to 22 later in the day. Now please be aware of temperature difference between lows and highs and take good care of yourself to avoid catching a cold. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Okay, well, those are the stories we have for you at this hour. For more of the latest stories, don't forget to check out our website, which can be found at arirang.co.kr/news. Have a fabulous weekend. Goodbye.